Hai, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the committee, I would like to welcome all of you on today's session as a part of webinar series. Today, I would like to take all of you on the presentation that talking about teaching and learning process, especially about teaching and learning methodology. And one thing we know that there are so many teaching and learning methodology in learning process, but today we are going to talk about one of them that is discovery learning. First of all, before we continue to the next session, let me introduce myself. My name is Taufik Ahmad Farudin. You can call me Taufik. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today's presentation aims to give us a brief understanding about discovery learning. So, this presentation will address apparently 3 points. The first is definition of discovery learning. The second is about advantages and disadvantages of discovery learning. And the third and the last is about implementation of discovery learning. So, we go to the first slide. That is definition of discovery learning. In this slide, it showed 4 components that represent discovery learning. The first, student-centered. Why student-centered represent discovery learning? Because discovery learning is focused on students' activity. It happens when students are involved in the learning process actively, especially in their mental process activities, in findings, concepts, and conclusions. So, it is student-centered. And then number 2, students are given a problem situation. That means the learning process is not providing final material or concepts, but students are expected to organize their learning process to find the final objective of the learning. And the third, students find an answer by their own, by doing some activities, by doing some project. And the fourth, it can be conducted by observing, making hypotheses, testing, recording, and analyzing, and also concluding. So in order to find their own answer, students will discover it by some activities. So, ladies and gentlemen, for instance, we can conclude that a teaching strategy, discovery learning, is a teaching strategy in which students are given a problem situation for which they find an answer by making a hypothesis, testing the hypothesis, recording, analyzing the results, and coming up with a conclusion. That means a conclusion is the main point of our lesson. We have to remember that this strategy, this discovery learning, is also mentioned as one of the learning methods that can build scientific behavior, social, and also to encourage students' curiosity. It is important for us as a teacher to prepare our learning as well as we can. Okay, we go to the next slide. In this slide, we see the title Advantages of Using Discovery Learning. Actually, there are so many advantages of using this model, but I will focus on those 3 advantages of using discovery learning. The first one, students enjoy discovering the answer to the questions or problems they are given. It raises students' curiosity because of their improvement of sense of investigating and succeeding. Furthermore, it helps students to fix and improve their abilities and cognitive process. And number 2, students are generally engaged throughout the lesson. It is not only student-centered, but also teacher-centered, both actively giving their parts in the process. This method also encourages students to think and work based on their initiative. They are also forced to think intuitively and defining their hypothesis. And the advantages of discovery learning is students feel a sense of control over their own learning. I mean, they set all their activities. This method also will help students to strengthen their self-concept because they put their trust in each other, their friend. They organize their activities, work together, and so many, and so on. I mean, but in contrast, we have some disadvantages of using this method. Besides, there are so many, but once again, I will focus on those three. The first one is this method, this discovery learning, needs a lot of preparation. When we want to get the result as we expected, it involves a lot of preparation to result in real learning. So, a lot of preparation, also a lot of cost, a lot of time, and so on. And the number two must be set up. It means that students first use prior knowledge, then they build on new skills and knowledge as they go throughout the lesson. Thoughtful questions must be created by the teacher to lead the students to the proper conclusion. If we want to get the result of learning that as we expected, we have to lead the students to the proper conclusion. And then the details of the lesson must be checked, and problems children may have be and may have must be anticipated. We have to know what are the possibilities of students' result in the end. And the number three of disadvantages of this learning, this method, I mean, it will not work in some conditions, some situations. This strategy would not work in situation where direct instruction is needed. For example, in math, in some direct instruction is needed in the class. So math is needed some direct instruction. So it will not work in math. That those advantages and disadvantages of discovery learning. We go to the next part of this discovery learning. Discovery learning lesson can take on different forms depending on the level of the students. In the slide, we have two levels. We divide it into two levels of classroom. The first is elementary classrooms, and the second is in upper elementary and secondary classroom. In elementary classroom, this discovery learning can be integrated when the students are given a purpose questions and must come up with their own hypothesis. Then we as the teacher test their prediction through an experiment set up by the teacher. And also students are given a step-by-step instructions followed by a set of questions in which the students discover something new. So we can make our student free activities. No. In this process, especially in elementary classroom, we have to give a set of step-by-step instruction. And number two, in upper elementary and secondary classroom, it can be an opportunity to research a subject of interest. Students can use technology to do research and to prepare a presentation. Also, online encyclopedias and other internet sites can be used to research to the information. It means that in the upper elementary and secondary classroom, it is higher level. So a set of step-by-step instruction maybe, or perhaps it can be the alternative, but it's not the essential thing. So we have to be carefully in integrating this method, this discovery learning in our classroom. So ladies and gentlemen, we have some things before, and then the next is about the activity cycle of discovery learning. In this slide, you see the cycle, the circle, If you look at this, it is the cycle that shows the activities of discovery learning. Start from stimulation, and then go to problem statement, data collection, data processing, verification, generalization. And it repeats. If you look at this, we go to the first one, stimulation. Stimulation, it means it is used for giving stimulus to students. So before we go to another activities, it's our duty as a teacher to give something as the preparation for the student, that is stimulus, that we call it as stimulation. And the second, about problem statement, it is before the student doing something or another activities, we have to accompany them to defining in defining the problem first. So student will do something, they have any goals and any objective, and then number 3 is data collection. The next is data collection. They can get some data by observing, recording, measuring, etc., and so on. And number 4 is data processing. When students get their data, they process the data that students can get from their observing or their finding, and also analyzing the data. And number 5 is verification. It verifies the data analysis. And the last, generalization, it sum up the findings and it analyze to get the conclusion. So ladies and gentlemen, the next part of this method, there are step by step, and the last is about discovery learning assessment. When we want to know about the parameter of our learning, the achievement of our students, we have to have this kind of assessment, because it is used to measure our learning. The assessment that can be conducted in discovery learning, there are two ways or two kind of assessment. The first, by test. The kind of test is about written test, and then assignment, performance, etc. And then the second is non-test. Non-test including cognitive, process, attitude, and students' work result assessment. So, ladies and gentlemen, from those about discovery learning, let's sum up what we have looked at about discovery learning. To sum up, we have the recap of this presentation. We have already talked about the first, defining discovery learning strategy. Let me repeat it for you. Discovery learning is a strategy in which students are given a problem situation for which they find an answer by making a hypothesis, and then testing the hypothesis, and then recording and analyzing the result, to get the data and coming up with a conclusion. That is, the conclusion is our main point of our lesson. And the second, about advantages and disadvantages of conducting discovery learning in our class. There are so many, but in the presentation we have 3 advantages and also 3 disadvantages. And also number 3 is steps in conducting discovery learning. There are 6 steps, including first stimulation, problem statement, and number 3 data collection, number 4 data processing, number 5 verification, and the last is about generation. It used to sum up our findings and our analysis to get the conclusion. So, and the last, it's about assessment, the discovery learning assessment. There are by test and non-test. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's all that I can share about discovery learning and discovery learning method to you. I hope that you are a little clearer on this method. And then finally, from this recap, it brings me to the end of my presentation. If you have any suggestions, any questions, I will be pleased to answer them. You can reach me at my email address like in the slide. You can text me and also feel free to give comments and also suggestion for me. I think that's all. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your listening. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.